I I think planting native plants in your own yard to me is one of the best things that we can do on a personal level to really improve the whole landscape around us, to improve the functionality of our environment, to create nectar corridors and wildlife corridors and everything. So I'm just excited that each of you are interested uh, in planting native. So I think that I will go to share my screen here. Let me see. I'll share, and it looks like we're ready to go. So I am calling this lecture Alternatives, to present to you alternative native plants that you can plant instead of the traditional yard plants that uh, we normally see in people's yards. And a lot of times people don't know what to plant in their yard native if they thought about planting things that they're used to, like a pepper tree and a lavender plant. They kind of have an idea what to do, but when you start introducing natives, some people don't know how to, what to really replace that traditional plant with a native. So that's what I'm going to be going through with you tonight. Oh, let's see. Um, I am not really sure why. There it is. Okay. I'm presenting this. Just a second. Let me get rid of that. On behalf of the Summer Tree Institute, our environmental education nonprofit, and I've developed this program through my informational website called The Power of Plants. And I do have a lot of information on native plants on that site, as well as on the Summer Tree Institute. So, the traditional approach, when we go out to a nursery and we're going to shop for landscape plants, we usually just walk in and you go to the big box stores and they only have certain things to pick from. And so we pick from those. And they're generally plants that are the same plants could be carried, around the whole country, maybe even around the world. So I'm proposing the alternatives approach where you actually select the plant that goes with the place that you're going to plant it. And we're not going to try to change the place to fit the plant. We're going to pick the plant that is right for the place you already have. And this approach allows you to trust that the native plants are going to take care of themselves because they actually evolved to grow in the place that you live. So you don't have to change the place. You don't have to add fertilizers. You don't have to add pesticides, herbicides, all this other stuff, because they have already co-evolved with the environment, including the organic, inorganic environment, the wildlife and everything. So you save yourself a lot of work. And when you look across our desert, especially those of us lucky enough to have mountains around us, like you do in the Antelope Valley, there's so much diversity to pick from because there's so many habitats between these low valleys and the mountains, the low slopes, the higher slopes, and there's all those niches, and every niche has kind of evolved a different set of plants. So we have a lot to pick from. Another thing is that all these plants that have evolved here, they have they have done so because there are certain conditions of not just the climate but the soil types, and like low nutrient soils that we have because we don't have a lot of biomass dropping every year and creating a big mulch layer. So a lot of these plants have to rely on fungal root partners to bring in enough nutrients and enough moisture in our soils that are low nutrient content, low moisture content. And so they've all evolved to figure out how to not just live but thrive in this environment. And those are the plants that we're going to pick from for our palette. So Our Southern California native plants have actually adapted within a Mediterranean climate influence. Now, we're not on the coast where you have the real powerful, the strong Mediterranean climate, but we're close enough here in Southern California, even in our inland areas here, to be influenced still by our Mediterranean climate. And I'm fascinated by this because if you look at the globe, between 35 degrees latitude and 45 degrees latitude north of the equator, and 30 degrees latitude and 45 degrees south of the equator, in those two bands around the globe is where we find the Mediterranean climates, but only on the west coast of each continent. And the reason for that is that that's where the cold water is. And the reason for that is because of the ocean currents. And the reason for that is because of the trade winds. And the reason for that is because of the rotation of the earth. And so that rotation causes a trade wind which grabs the water and drives the currents. And so on the west side of each continent around the globe, between 30 and 45 degrees north and 30 and 45 degrees south, we have Mediterranean climates. We still here in the desert, even though we're not right on the coast, are so influenced by the Mediterranean climate, which creates hot, dry summers and mild, rainy winters. If you look at our East Coast, you know it's totally different. There's warm water when you jump into the ocean there. And they have, they get rain all the time, and they don't have mild winters as freezing. So this is a climate that we are influenced by, even though we're not right on the coast. This is definitely influencing our Southern California native plants. So when you go into nurseries, many of the plants that are sold as drought adapted are actually from these Mediterranean climates around the world. For instance, you'll see plants, they'll say where it's native to: South Africa, Southwest Australia, Central Chile, the Mediterranean Basin, and Southern California. And so these are the plants that we should be looking at the most to plant in our climate here, because they're already pre-adapted to this climate. So our Southern California native plants are adapted to soils that are hot and dry in the summer, and soils that are cool and wet in the winter. You don't find hot soil that's wet naturally, and usually when it's cool, it's not dry. We have, more moist soils. The problem that we have is overwatering in the summer, because we're mixing metaphors here. We're taking the hot soil and pouring water on it in the middle of the summer. And our plants are not used to that. And that hot, wet soil, and because we can get up to, 118, 120 degrees in the air, but the soil temperature will even be hotter than that. And if we keep it wet too long, not just like a thunderstorm and then it dries all up, but if we keep that hot soil wet too long, you're going to grow bacteria and fungus, and you're going to give the plants root rot. And this is one of our biggest issues with trying to grow anything really in the desert, is that people say, oh, I really need to water it in the summer so it stays alive, and then it dies. And they go, I don't understand it. I was watering it every day. And you go, oh, you just crossed the line, So Mediterranean plants are pre-adapted to our desert because of the climate, and that's why they work so well here. Our Southwest native plants are perfectly adapted to our desert because they have evolved for thousands and thousands of years to thrive in this habitat. So when we go into the nursery, how do we actually select a plant? We just go, oh, that's so pretty. Oh, that's so lush. But that's not really what we should be distracted by. We should select plants that are adapted to our climate, starting out with finding ones that come from any of those Mediterranean climates around the globe is a really good first start. So when you are plant shopping, you need to think function and desert friendliness. Function being, do I want a shade tree? Do I want a ground cover? Do I want um, plants that attract hummingbirds? What is the function? So you think of the function. So you're picking out something that you really want to make a part of your yard. And the next thing is desert friendliness. You'll save yourself so much grief if you do that. If we pick the right plants, you can actually have a native yard that does look lush. Everything in this scene, except for a pepper tree way in the background, is actually native to where I live. This is our front yard. This is in Morongo Valley. So you just by planting native doesn't mean it has to be all cactus and sticky things. There's so many plants that you can pick from that look lush and are native, and are going to take the heat, the cold, the wind, the low nutrients. So if we're going out to the nursery and you are thinking of getting this exotic tree, exotic meaning not that it's all fancy and falderall, but exotic not from our area, out of our area. So if you're thinking of getting like a California pepper tree, which isn't actually from California, it's from Peru, but okay. But you want that kind of a tree because you want an evergreen character tree, and you want it to be really drought tolerant and take the heat and the cold. And so you're thinking of pepper tree. I would like you to consider these alternatives. The first one is sugar bush. Sugar bush is Rus ovata, and it's very low water use. It's extremely drought tolerant. It provides evergreen shade. You can actually, it's a shrub. So shrubs branch at ground level, and a tree branches above ground level. So a sugar bush is actually considered a shrub because it branches at ground level, but you can pick one or two branches and prune it up into a tree, and it makes just a gorgeous tree. The bark is so beautiful in age on a sugar bush. It's called sugar bush because when the little berries that are actually drupes, when they are ripe, they ooze a sugar that is both sweet and tart. And you can collect those berries and soak them in hot water and make your own lemonade. Now, if you like lemonade sour, don't add anything, but I like to add a little bit of agave nectar. It just makes the most lovely lemonade type drink. And we actually have a hedge of sugar bush all along our street, so we never see cars because we have not pruned those sugar bush up. They just are big shrubs, and it makes a wonderful privacy screen. And also every night all the songbirds in our yard go in there and roost overnight. So another plant that you could substitute for a typical evergreen tree like pepper tree is toyon, Heteromeles arbustifolia. Toyon is also called Christmas holly, and toyon is the only native plant that we have here that is still called the native word for it, which is an Ohlone word, toyon. And I love toyon so much. The picture here in our tree, we've actually pruned up to make it more of a tree because it is, again, it branches at ground level, so it's a shrub, but you can prune it up to make it think it's a tree. And we've done that over one of our decks here. It's very drought tolerant, provides evergreen shade, low water use. And the berries, I love the berries. Ours are just starting to turn red right now. And so we will have berries to decorate the hearth and stick in wreaths and everything all winter. They retain the red berries through early spring. So it's really a great thing for the birds, to feed the birds in your yard, because they love the berries as well. And you can cook the berries and make I've made like fruit leather out of it, or sauces. You can dry the berries and grind them up and use them as a spice. you can make a pie out of it. So anyway, a wonderful tree. And we have toyons all the way down our driveway. And so we can't see the house next to us because of all of our toyons. So it's a great single tree that you can make into a single tree, or a really nice hedge as well. So another great alternative that replaces normal, not normal, but the traditional evergreen tree is California bay laurel. It's Umbellularia californica, and this grows in the San Gabriel Mountains, just above your Antelope Valley there. And it is drought tolerant, provides beautiful evergreen shade. We use all of our leaves in cooking. I haven't bought bay leaves for probably 30 years because we use these. The nuts are also used medicinally for things like headaches and things like that. I haven't used that. I don't get headaches, but we use our tree all the time in cooking. It's a wonderful tree. So that was some options for evergreen trees. Now, what if you want a deciduous tree? You want one that drops its leaves in the winter because perhaps you want to let sunlight in the winter to warm, say, a south-facing room you have. So you want a deciduous tree, but you still want it to be drought tolerant, and you're thinking of like Chinaberry or Texas umbrella tree. And I say, stop, don't do it. Instead, you could try some of these trees. Honey mesquite. Oh, and I still have Prosopis glandulosa. They've changed the name. They've changed the name on everything. Any rate, that's the old name. Extremely drought tolerant. And the reason that honey mesquite is so drought tolerant is that the roots have been found to grow to depths of at least 150 feet. So they're growing down to rain that has fallen maybe years and years before, and they're still able to produce a reliable crop of honey mesquite beans every year because their toes are still in water. And it's such a great plant. After you get it established, you don't even have to water it at all. Those roots will go down and they'll find water. It provides a filtered shade. It actually adds nitrogen to the soil because it has a symbiotic relationship in its roots with a bacteria that fixes nitrogen out of the air and turns it into fertilizer for the soil. So that's pretty cool. The pods are edible. They're edible when they're green and very flexible still. You can either just munch on them or you can saute them. As soon as they start getting more stiff and hard, and then when they turn tan colored, then you can zip them up in a blender. You have to do it several times to get the seeds out. The seeds are so hard they won't grind up, but you can make your own mesquite flour from these, and it's a fantastic flour. I love the flour, and we make it in some of my plant use classes and gobble it up. It's so good. So another alternative to, say, that Texas umbrella tree is a blue palo verde, a Cirsidium floridum, and this tree is the one that you might see in desert parks and places like that because it's so beautiful. It gets a green bark with age, and it has just masses of flowers all over it. It's a fast-growing tree. It does provide filtered shade, and it's almost like a sculpture in your yard with that beautiful green trunk. There's a hybrid called Desert Museum that you can get even in like Home Depot and places like that. It's not our true native here, but it does it performs really well in our environment too, even though it's not totally native. So another deciduous tree that is really lovely is desert willow or desert catalpa, Scilopsis linearis. It's only called desert willow because somebody thought that the leaves looked like a willow. It's not a willow at all. It doesn't have little pussy willow catkins on it. It has these beautiful orchid-like flowers, like the catalpa family has. And those flowers attract hummingbirds. So besides it being a beautiful tree, you get to see the hummingbirds with it as well. Really nice tree, and it's very sculptural as well in age. So what if you were thinking about buying oleander? Please tell me you're not. But what if you were thinking about buying oleander because you wanted an evergreen screen that would act as a windbreak and it was really drought tolerant? Well, there are other options. Consider these alternatives. One of my favorites is creosote. If you plant it in a line, you can make a hedge out of it. And if you just trim the tips off every so often, it will form new branches and become very dense. If you never trim it at all, it might grow up high and almost make a tall tree-like plant. But if you just trim the tops a little bit, and I'm just talking like 4 or 5 inches off the tops, then you will spur all this new growth from the bottom. Whenever you water it, it makes abundant flowers. It's not as dependent on a season to produce flowers as it is on rainfall. So it's really beautiful. You can prune it into a hedge or a screen. You can leave it natural, but whatever you do, it's just one of my favorite landscape plants. It is also another one that grows extremely deep roots. If you see, say, a 1 foot tall creosote, its roots are down probably well over 5 to 6 feet already. So these roots get really deep, and that's why after you get it established in your yard, you don't even have to water it anymore. If you do keep watering it, it will grow faster. But never, ever, ever put fertilizer on a creosote or you'll kill it in 2 days. So another great alternative to oleanders is hollyleaf cherry, Prunus ilicifolia. It's really drought tolerant, but it is one of our arid lands plants that tolerates part shade. We even have one that's in almost full shade. It came up on its own. I wouldn't have planted where I did, but it's just doing great. It's just the leaves are about this big instead of the leaves being like that big. But it's neat to know that if you do have a pretty shady place, it can take that. It has very lush evergreen leaves. They've got little points on it like holly does. So if you hold it real tight, it'll feel a little bit prickly. It creates an edible fruit that it looks really big. That looks like a great big cherry with a little seed. Well, it's a great big cherry with a great big seed. The fruit layer is only maybe less than 1/4 of an inch thick, but I have probably 15 hollyleaf cherries around our yard, and there's like 5 or 6 that are really sweet. There's some that are just kind of ho-hum, but I mean some of them are really sweet, and so I eat them all the time if I can get to them before the birds do, because every bird that eats fruit will be there. The hard-headed, oh no, I call them hard-headed, the black-headed grosbeaks love them. The verdins, the orioles, the tanagers. I mean, if you want to bring birds into your yard, plant a hollyleaf cherry and you'll have it. You can prune them into a hedge or a screen or prune them up into a tree. They are the genus Prunus, and what I say about that genus is that it asks you, prune us, so you can prune them to any shape you want, and they will respond. So make them into a tree, they go fine. Make them into a hedge, they go fine. Leave them, whatever you want to do. If you look in the picture where it says tolerates part shade, that's our roof behind there. You can see what a great screen it makes for your house or the street. So another great alternative to oleanders, grows much more slowly than oleanders, but as soon as it's established, you really never need to water it, and that's jojoba, Simonsia chinensis. And it's called chinensis because somebody screwed up a herbarium thing way long ago and thought it was from China. It is not from China. It's our own native plant. Extremely drought tolerant. And part of the reason is if you look at the leaves here, they're all pointing up. And that's a way to get out of the sun. They get much less sun if they're at an angle to the sun like this. If they're facing this, they would get direct sun. But they stay out of the sun by pointing straight up. And that makes them extremely drought tolerant. The leaves stay cooler so they don't use as much water. Jojoba also is prized because it is where we get jojoba oil, which is not an oil, it's a liquid wax. So it never goes rancid, and it's chemically very, very similar to our own sebum that we produce. So it's the perfect oil to put on your skin because it doesn't clog your pores, and it, you're basically putting, your own replacement for your own skin oil on with this. So any rate, well, and this is just one of our jojoba trees in our yard, and now I've planted about 8 of them because I'm thinking of getting a little extractor and making the oil myself because I love it so much, and I always keep it in glass. Don't ever buy jojoba oil in plastic because it absorbs that, and you don't want any plastic in your stuff. So maybe you're thinking of Pittosporum because you have a place where you want to have a dense, low shrub that's evergreen. But you don't want to do that. You want to go native. So here's some great alternatives. California buckwheat, Eriogonum fasciculatum. To me, it's one of the mainstays of a native garden. It's extremely drought tolerant, long lasting. In the spring, it blooms with these beautiful white flowers. Each one of those flower heads is a compilation of many, many dozens of flowers, and they have pink pollen. So if you get real close to it and you look, it's these little pink pollen on these little white to pinkish flowers. It's just perfect. In the fall, those flower heads will turn reddish brown, like in the bottom of the slide here, and they make great additions for decorations in dried bouquets. They're a great source of honey. If you've ever had buckwheat honey, this is where it came from. And I have this all around our yard in different places, and to me, I consider California buckwheat the baby's breath of the garden. When you tuck it in somewhere, it fills out your bouquet, your landscape bouquet. So you have to have California buckwheat. There is a coastal variety and a desert variety. This is the desert variety, and the inflorescence is a single ball on top, and just very occasionally will branch at the top. And the coastal variety has more branching at the top of the stems, and they look a little bit different. But I have tried the coastal variety, and it does grow here in the high desert. It blooms at a different time than the other ones. So if you plant both varieties in your yard, you're going to have an even longer bloom cycle. So another great alternative is Mormon tea or ephedra. And there are 3 varieties that are native right around where you are. The mountain variety is ephedra viridis, which means green, and that's the one pictured here on the right hand side is ephedra viridis, and that's farther up the mountains, but it's grown here in our yard. We're at 2,600 feet elevation, and it does great here. I'm not sure how well it would do in a really low desert, but you guys are, you're high desert like us here. the plant to the left hand side of your screen is nevadensis and Nevada, and then there's also California, and I believe the bottom inset is the male flowers. The male flowers of ephedra are basically just all pollen balls. The female cones, I don't have a picture of them here, but they're like little brown hard little nuts is what they look like, and they would all grow good in your area. The Nevada one is a little more bluish green, and the California is more yellowish green, and the California has 3 scales at each node, and I was just looking to see this. I can't really see on the little scales at the node here. It looks like there might be 3, and that would be California. If there's just 2 scales at the node, it's Nevada. So just so you know, if you go to a native plant sale, what you're looking for. The really bright green will be the mountain ephedra viridis, the ephedra viridis. Anyway, it's a great ground cover for nesting birds, and you can make a tea out of it. It doesn't have true ephedrine in it. It has pseudoephedrine in it, so it's a mild stimulant. But some people have found that it's valuable for helping with their allergies if they drink ephedra tea at the beginning of an allergy season. So another great compact, dense compact plant is hollyleaf redberry, Rhamnus ilicifolia. And the leaves look quite a bit like hollyleaf cherry, but not exactly. They usually have a little bit of a roundedness to them, a little bit of a curl, and hollyleaf cherries are mostly pretty flat. But these produce a fruit that attracts songbirds. It's a really great tasting fruit, and you never get to have it because the birds are there before you can even, grab it. And this is another plant that is very drought tolerant and still tolerates shade. So it's good if you have a place on the north side of your house or whatever, and it gets pretty shady. This is something that can take that. So what if you were thinking about an exotic shrub like a camellia, because you want a plant with showy flowers and you need it to be shade tolerant? Say it's going to be on the north side of your house. Well, here's some great alternatives. Red fairy duster, Calliandra californica, is one of those amazing plants because it can both tolerate part shade and it can take reflected heat. And I mean, that doesn't even make sense to me that you can do that, but there's a lot of times people want to plant something against a wall that's a south facing wall, and they'll plant something there, even sometimes cactus, and the cactus gets all burned on the wall side because the sun is beating down on the wall and reflecting back on the back side of the cactus, and it burns the cactus. Well, here is a plant that can tolerate part shade, but it can take reflected heat. So, what a great plant. It's really drought tolerant. To me, the claim to fame is it attracts hummingbirds. They will even get territorial over your red fairy duster. And it's very long blooming. It can flower year round. Ours in our yard is still blooming now in December. But it has the most flowers in the spring and fall. Great plant. It's just a great plant. So another great showy flowered alternative is California fuchsia. Epilobium canum or Zauschneria californica, depends on, if they've changed it again, the name. California fuchsia is really interesting because it's a fall bloomer. And it blooms right when hummingbirds are on their fall migration. And the hummingbirds have a long enough bill to actually get the nectar out of it, and it's such a long throat that very few other things can get in there and sip the nectar. So it's a pretty symbiotic relationship that this fall bloomer opens to give nectar to the hummingbirds right when they're doing their fall migration, and that's what pollinates the plant to spread the pollen and make more seeds. So it's really a great plant. It will tolerate part shade, but it'll take full sun as well, and just a beautiful plant. Another great alternative showy flowered plant is bush monkey flower, Mimulus aurantiacus. It attracts hummingbirds and butterflies. That's really neat. And it does do great in pots. And I like to keep mine in a pot because sometimes it looks great and then sometimes the year it doesn't look great. So you just kind of put it out, put it right front row center when it looks great, and you kind of scooch it over to the edges when it's not looking as great. It does have a long blooming season from March to August, and that's really nice. It's just a beautiful plant, and you can get this in yellow, pink, red, orange. So there's a lot of different colors that you can get. So what if you are thinking of a very traditional landscape plant like lavender, because you want showy flowers, but you want fragrant foliage and you want it to be really drought tolerant. So what would your options be if you wanted to go native? Here's some of those. White sage, Salvia apiana, named after apis bees because the bees love these flowers so much. The bees do make a very flavorful honey from the tons and tons of flowers that white sage has. It has a really beautiful silvery white foliage that looks so good in contrast with all of your dark green leaf plants around it. It's very striking. The leaves are aromatic and they have been burned as incense for time memorial. It's considered a cleansing plant, and that's why it was burned as a smudge by Native Americans. It's been shown to have antimicrobial properties, so it probably really does do cleansing. I like to take one leaf and just put it in my water bottle for the day, and it just seems to perk me up, and it flavors the water a little bit. It's just great. And I think if you have a native plant garden in the high desert, you shouldn't have that garden without white sage. It's magnificent. So another great alternative is Cleveland sage. So Cleveland sage grows in Cleveland National Forest. So it's just a little bit more inland than we are, but it does very well in the desert. It takes occasional water in the summer to make it look good. And in low desert applications, it does like to have afternoon shade. But it is so gorgeous. It has a long bloom season. And the hummingbirds go crazy for it. And the fragrance it's just one of the best fragrances in the whole world. I love it. If I have to trim any of it off, I let them dry and I take the leaves off and use them in potpourri, and then you just can walk by when they're dry and just crush them just a little bit, that it lets out that fabulous aroma. Another great aromatic, lovely flowered bush is desert purple sage, Salvia dorii, and it's very long blooming. I don't know what's going on this year, but mine just started flowering again in December. All kinds of weird things are happening. My Cleveland sage also started blooming again about 3 weeks ago. So I don't know what's up. Orchid, if you can tell me what's going on later, I'd like to hear your take on this. But this desert purple sage it's so beautiful, and it stays pretty compact. Right now, the white-crowned sparrows that have migrated here for the winter, they spend a lot of time underneath that plant just picking up seeds. So it's a great wildlife, songbird plant as well, and wonderful fragrance. Now, what if you're thinking about an exotic shrub like the bush daisy or green euryops? because you want showy flowers, but you want a really compact plant. So what might your native options be? Well, here's some. Brittlebush Encilia farinosa is a great pick. It's a very sturdy, hardy plant with beautiful silvery leaves. A lot of hair on them to try to reflect the sun and stay cooler, and so they don't use as much water, so you don't have to water them as much either. So very drought tolerant. They contrast really well, that silver color with all of your dark green things and with cacti. They attract butterflies. Butterflies like to actually sit on, they like to rest while they're sucking their nectar, so they like a platform, and here's this beautiful platform for them. There's also sap in them that has been used for incense, especially when the missions started being built along the California coast. They like to burn incense in their missions, and they couldn't always get incense from overseas, so they started having the Native Americans that were conscripted into there gather this incense. I think that they called it tears, because wherever the plant is hurt, it kind of cries, it weeps this sap, and the sap has been burned for incense, and it makes a lovely smell. I actually did my master's thesis on this plant, and I collected those in the field and burned them when I was doing my research in the lab. So it's a great plant on all levels. Another great alternative plant is desert mallow, Sphaerosia ambigua. It is extremely drought tolerant. It does tolerate reflected sun, so you could plant it right next to a wall and it won't even flinch. It's a great source of pollen for honeybees, and in the low desert it can bloom all year. If it freezes, then in your area, then it'll stop blooming for a while, but it's it's just one of those great plants with a whole bunch of flowers on it. Another great small beautiful flowered plant that's a dense compact plant is turpentine bush, Ericameria lauricifolia. It also has it's a great source of pollen for honeybees and nectar for butterflies. It's a fall bloomer, which I really like to have some things that bloom in the fall, not just for the beauty in the yard, but for the pollinators. They've got to make it through a whole year. So think about getting not just spring flowers and summer flowers, but fall flowers as well. There's the foliage is deep green and very dense, so it looks pretty even when it's not in bloom. And another fairly dense plant, but it can get a little bit leggy, but if you just prune it back a little bit, it'll stay compact, is bladderpod, Paratoma arborea. It attracts hummingbirds, butterflies, and moths, and in the center there, that's a hawk moth or sphinx moth. And in our yard, the hummingbirds fight with the hawk moths at dusk to try to get the last of the nectar out of them. This is actually in the same family as capers, and the little unopened flower buds you see there, like in the left-hand picture, those unopened flower buds, you can actually make desert capers out of them by pickling them. And it's called bladderpod because of the big bladder-like fruits on them. And when those fruits are very small and they're still flexible and the seed inside is still very soft, then you can saute them. You can saute the flowers too, the whole thing. It's and edible in small doses if you don't cook it. But if you're going to eat any good amount, you do need to cook it because there's a compound in it that might be irritating to your mouth. So what if you're thinking you just want some flowers? You're thinking of vinca because they bloom so long. Well, they're pretty, and I admit I have some vincas in some flower boxes right outside our windows, but you can't everybody in my yard, you have to be native to be in the ground. And so what if I wanted those same kind of flowers but in the ground? Here's some options for showy flowers that are very heat tolerant and have a high drought tolerance. So one of my favorite go-tos is desert marigold, Bailea multiradiata. It tolerates heat, cold, either full sun or reflected sun. The only thing it can't take is overwatering. You will kill it if you overwater it. It is not a long-lived plant, but if it's happy, it'll reseed and just new ones keep coming up. It's extremely drought tolerant, and just any place you put it, it just kind of makes you smile. It's just a great little plant. Now there's also things like all the penstemons. This one is Eaton's firecracker, Penstemon eatonii, and we'll look at that. What's not to love? The hummingbirds love it. It's just a gorgeous plant, and even when it's not in bloom, it's got nice, dense, lush leaves on it. So it's very pretty, and it is among the first to bloom in early spring. Also, there's showy penstemon, Penstemon spectabilis. It's another one that's very drought tolerant, and you be careful not to overwater it. Another great source of pollen for honeybees. In low desert applications, it can bloom all year with just occasional summer water. But when it freezes, it'll stop blooming here in our high desert. And there's so many other plants, but I'm running out of time. So when you look across the desert and you just look at this diversity we have and all the colors, really think about hunting these down in our nurseries, because it's worth it. This is just some of the nurseries that sell natives in our area. The left-hand side of your screen is the Cismontane, the coastal side of the San Gabriel Mountains. Some of the bigger nurseries there, and on the right-hand side, that's the Transmontane. That's the desert side of the San Gabriels. Those are some nurseries there. But for a full, listing of all the nurseries that sell native plants, go to Calscape, and on their website, you can just look for California nurseries, and there's a map, and you can just click on any little dot, and it'll tell you the nursery, the website, the phone number, and stuff like that, so you can get all that information. So just a couple of tips if you do decide to plant native, or maybe you already are and you might already know this, but just as a reminder, try to always plant native plants in the fall. That gives them all fall when the soil is still warm but the air is cool. Some native plants, when you plant them, may get up to 70% of their annual root growth between the fall and the spring. If you plant in the spring, they don't have a long enough time to get their roots established to really be drought tolerant for that first summer. So if you can plant in the fall, it's the best. And don't plant any later than, like, really, April would be like the latest. The later you plant, the harder it's going to be for that little baby in its first summer. You have to resist the urge to buy native plants really big, because their whole MO for drought tolerance is to grow really deep roots. And so when you see a native plant in the wild, you'll see a little tiny top, and you'll think maybe that the roots are only that big. They put all their energy into getting the roots deep enough before the first summer so that they can survive that first summer. It doesn't matter if it's like a California juniper that can live for 2,500 years. If it can't get through the first summer, it's dead meat. So it's working on getting a really, really long root. Most plants, desert plants, you won't find a desert plant that has a ratio of less than 1 part above to 3 parts below the ground. But normally it can be up to 5 to 11 times longer of a root than it is above ground. In the nursery, they don't have the option of getting the true ratio of top to bottom. You'd be taking home a 10-foot tall pot with a 6-inch plant. So the smaller a pot that you buy in a nursery, the less chance it has of the root already hitting and circling the bottom of the pot. So it's a hard thing to do, but the smaller of a native plant you buy, the better. If you do find a nursery that grows deep pots, like Mojave Desert Land Trust will sell a pot. It's almost a foot tall pot, and the plant may only be this tall in it, and that's what you really want to look for. It's hard to do. You want to get the big one, but try not to do it. And when you're watering your native plants, try to simulate our climate. Give them lots of water in the cool months, and then infrequent deep watering in the summer months. So I say make like a thunderstorm in the summer. You get a whole bunch of rain and then no water again for a month or 2 months, so that they totally dry out, but they will still be water deep enough in the soil that their roots can access that. But the top will be dry. When that dries out, it's going to be really hot, and you don't want it to be, remember, you don't want it wet and hot. You want it dry when it's hot. But you can make like a thunderstorm, get that water real deep, and be okay. You can water deeply and infrequently, getting water to the roots by using either deep watering sleeves that you can make yourself. But it's easier to do when you're planting a new plant and you've dug a hole, and you can put this down, and then you put your dripper, your emitter down into the the deep water sleeve. It does eliminate evaporation because you're delivering the water underground, and it avoids root rot in the summer when the surface soils are hot. But it's really hard to put in if your plant is already established. So that's why I like to use deep water stakes for established plants. You can put these in for new plants too, but if you have established plants and you want to add a deep water stake, these you just take the cap off, and with just a hammer or a rubber mallet, you pound it in at the drip line of the plant. That's where the absorbing roots are, and then stick your emitter down, or you can even put an adapter on your hose to get the hose to go way down in your tube, so you can water it. And there's a hole at the top. You can see the hole. You can stick your screwdriver through, and then pull it up and move it out as the plant grows and the drip line extends. You want to keep that water under the drip line, so you want to keep moving those stakes out. And it's very easy to move these, and it's really hard to move the sleeves. So why should we plant natives? Well, they're great choices for landscaping, and for so many reasons. The deep roots we've already talked about. This is going to help you in every sense of the word. Those deep roots, if you water them correctly, really deep watering infrequently, they'll grow deep roots, and then you don't have to water them anymore. They have fungal root partners that are helping to bring in nutrients through a fungal network of threads. This is a pine tree, is the yellow root, and all the rest of the white is the mycelium from fungal root partners, and they are all connecting to our native plants to bring in more nutrients and water, and to add immune boosting compounds. You have a freedom from fertilizers because you have these mycorrhizal root partners bringing in the fertilizers, so you don't need to add any fertilizer. These plants all have developed chemical weapons that are bitter tasting compounds like glucosides and terpenes, and all the nasty tasting stuff. They have it themselves, and therefore you don't have to add pesticides. They're making their own pesticides. You can have these beautiful landscapes with very low maintenance. These plants are adapted to here, and so you don't have to do much to them. So it's a low care, low maintenance landscape. And there's going to be less plant replacement because these plants live so long. These are just an idea of some of the ages of our Southwest desert plants. Um, you know, California junipers can live way over 1,000 years, Mojave yucca over 2,000, barrel cactus even, you know, well over 100 years. Ironwood trees can grow over 800 years. Creosote bush, of course, the daddy of them all, you know, over 10,000 years. Um, but if you plant any of these in your yard, they're probably going to outlive you. You'll be attracting all the right birds and wildlife. And well, like I say, if you plant native or nearly native, it attracts all the right neighbors, like this Gambel's quail. And you will be creating a nectar corridor for migrations from north to south and south to west. And what a fun thing to be, especially for hummingbirds. When they are going into these tubular flowers, they are actually not just drinking the nectar, they're getting the pollen all over them, and they go to the next flower, and there they are doing all this pollination for us. So, planting native in your own yard starts a legacy. Um, all of us together planting native, we're achieving something bigger than just us. We're creating a habitat for birds and pollinators. We're protecting our groundwater from excess nitrates and fertilizers, and we are using the little water that we have more wisely. So just imagine that you have a all native yard, and it's climate adapted, and it's giving you year-round beauty with color and beautiful aromas, scents, and so many of them are edible. And at the same time, you're saving water and money. So why wouldn't you want to plant native? And if you choose drought tolerant native plants, then you don't have to change your site to fit the plants. You're choosing the plants that already fit your site. They've evolved to thrive in our soils that are low in nutrients, and they're very dry, and they're fast draining soils. We don't have a lot of clay soils. So you're just picking the right plant for the place if you pick our natives. I wanted to say that we, both with our nonprofit, the Summer Tree Institute, and with my informational website, The Power of Plants, we have a lot of information to help you plant and maintain your plants. And we have this desert native landscape guide it's a big fold out, and you can take it into the field to help identify plants. You can take it into your nursery and say, I want that plant. You can take it into your yard, and it'll tell you how big the plants will get, when they bloom, what their frost tolerance is. And I have these here, but you're not with me. So if you are interested in one of those, you can get them for $5 on our website. You can order them for $5, and we will send those to you. You can get them on our native plants page at the Summer Tree website. And this just shows each panel is organized by the functional type, like the trees and tall shrubs. These are the perennial subshrubs or grasses, the cacti and succulents. And then there's a lot of information on each plant to help you decide, what to plant. I have a lot more information on my personal website, The Power of Plants, about how to water, when to water, and things like that. So just check it out if you're going to be planting natives, and also how to harvest a lot of these and how to use them in your own life. So that's just my website is powerofplants.com, and I just want you all to think native. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Robin, for the informational talk. They're definitely uses that I never even thought of for plants. They're really cool. So I wanted to ask, does anyone else have any questions that you wanted to ask Robin?
What if you have a house?
Let me unshare my screen so I can see you. Here, let me stop share. Okay. Now, can you see me? I can see some of you.
I can see you.
Okay, and let's just gonna bring up the chat so I can see what's happened over here. Okay, oops. Okay, so somebody asked where I live.
So I have a house in the lower desert by Yuma, Arizona, and my uh, fiance has a house here in the Antelope Valley. But the house that I have down in Yuma has flood irrigating. Would some of these plants not do well with that kind of circumstances, or would that be kind of like the thunderstorm
The
monsoon?
flood irrigation will work if you make like a thunderstorm. If you water, if the top 6 inches stays wet, you'll kill them all in the
Okay.
summer. It's just too hot. You're just gonna. It's like putting a wet piece of bread on top of the refrigerator. You know what you get. you know. So make like a thunderstorm, and even then that type of irrigation, but not just a quick thing. You've got to get that water down deep
Hmm.
to to um to get it deep enough to where when the surface dries out, the roots below still have moisture. So make, yeah, big thunderstorm, let it go for, an hour, two, and then nothing until, and I really recommend people get a moisture meter and just stick that down in the ground, and as you watch the meter as you slowly push it down into the soil, and you'll see right where the moisture, how deep the moisture is.
Okay.
If you just stick it down and it's really wet in the top, and then you get down and it's dry, you haven't watered deep enough for these plants.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so, oh, I see there's a question. Will there be a recording? Yes, Alana has um, recorded this, so she said it'll be available, right?
And or could put the link to the YouTube channel on the website or on the chat. Yeah, and yeah, the San Gabriel Mountain CNPS. So if you search that on YouTube, you'll be able to find the channel.
Okay.
And I had a question just as like a person kind of getting new, because I still have an apartment right now, so I'm just like throwing things in pots. But when you're putting things into a yard, is there like a certain sign that's like maybe like new growth buds or something that you could use to recognize, okay, this plant's now established, I can start treating it as an established plant?
Um, you you were breaking up for me. I don't think I heard everything, but is this the question? How do you know when a plant is actually established after you've planted it in the ground? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. The real fast way to know if it's okay, I have to say, do you have rabbits or jackrabbits in your yard?
I think people have had like more so gophers out here.
Ah, okay. Yeah, gophers are a tough one. I've actually been planting my new native plants with hardware cloth around the root ball so the roots can grow through, but it's harder for a gopher to get in and eat everything, you know. And if you have rabbits, especially jackrabbits, but Audubon cottontails as well, like I said when we were first chatting, you can plant like a desert mallow right next to a desert mallow that's been growing there for 50 years. It was, there before you got there, and you plant a new one, and the rabbits don't touch the one that's been there, and they eat the new one that you've planted down to the ground. I don't know what's going on, but I think, like I said, Orchid, if you have a theory, my theory is that the new one is not connected into the mycorrhizal grid. I call it the Root Partners Club. If you're not connected to the Root Partners Club, you're not getting all of the compounds fed into you that make for bitter compounds in the leaves. And so until that plant gets established and connects into the Root Partners Club, the mycorrhizal fungal network, um, it's going to just taste so good that all the rabbits and the squirrels and everybody are just going to eat it down. So I actually try to cage the native plants, for the first 2 years. If you see that the leaves are growing through the cage and nobody's eating it, then you know you can take it off. As far as knowing if it's established by its roots, um, just the best thing to do is to water like we've been talking about, really deep infrequent water in the summer. In the winter, you can water it to your heart's content. You could water it every single day. It doesn't matter because it's so cool. Nothing, the fungus and bacteria aren't going to grow. But as soon as that soil starts heating up, you have to let the surface dry out and try to water it deep enough that the moisture stays below where the soil gets hot. Um, and whether to know if it's established or not, generally when it really starts growing, it's established, because a lot of times people will say, Robin, I planted a holly leaf cherry and it has not grown at all. It's been in the ground for 2 years and it hasn't grown at all. And I said, au contraire, it's putting all of its effort into the roots. It's getting those roots so deep. And, like, we normally don't do that. We go for the glitz, the glamour, and all that kind of stuff when we're not getting our foundation. Well, desert native plants, they do it the right way. They spend most of their energy getting those roots down deep. Then maybe like the end of the second year, maybe into the third year, all of a sudden they start growing. You go, oh, it is growing. Well, it's been growing the whole time. It's just that you didn't see it. So when you start seeing growth really happening above, it's probably established now.
Thank you.
Orchid.
I think that's one of the best explanations of how it's established that I have heard thus far, and I totally am with you on the Root Partners Club, and I'm going to steal that language. I just want you to know. And but I will say that Barbara Eisenstein came up with a rule of thumb, not for the desert, because she's in South Pasadena, but she said, when it's at least 3 times the size it was in the can, in the pot. And that's kind of, it's not going to necessarily help you with the tree because it will be much slower growing, but for perennials, it's kind of, it is a rule of thumb.
Right. Okay, good. Thanks.
And then we do have one, we have a question in the chat about when to prune. So she says, Catherine Gallagher says, when should we be pruning back natives? Some of mine are getting large, very large and wild.
Well, that all depends on the plant species. As a rule of thumb, evergreens, evergreen trees and shrubs, like I'll say, holly leaf cherry and sugar bush and toyon, all of those, the best time to prune them is in the winter. If you prune them in the summer, the summer, on the West Coast, our growing season really is like the spring and maybe early summer, but things really slow down in the middle of the summer. And so it's harder if we prune things in the middle of the summer. It's easier on them if we prune them when it's cool. Some plants, you almost have to Google the plant that you're talking about, because some plants don't like to be pruned at all, and some plants can take pruning all the way down to the ground. Generally, plants that go dormant, that's if they're dormant, with the leaves have dropped off, that's a good time to prune. It's just that it's really hard to say one rule for all of them, because it really does depend on the species a lot. I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. let's see. Are there any other? I haven't looked at all these questions in the chat. Let's see.
There's not that many questions in the chat, actually.
Okay.
I think people were really listening. And people
Okay.
say, fabulous presentation. Thank you, Robin.
Oh, well,
And some people obviously want to rewatch it right away. And someone says, wonderful presentation, love the alternatives format. So, and
oh,
very informative, even for us non-desert people.
uh-huh. Well, so there's some of your members then live up in the San Gabriel Mountains?
The San Gabriel Mountains are just like the biggest feature of the San Gabriel of our region.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's right. Yeah, and I did talk with Alana about whether whether I should focus on the desert or the mountains. You can see it's really hard to give enough information about both of those in the same talk. So I concentrate on the desert, but I just want you to know if you do live up in the mountains, a whole bunch of these plants will work for you. The toyon, the California bay laurel, um, the holly leaf cherry. There's a lot of these plants will do well there. I didn't mention this, but on my website, and also on the Power of Plants website and on the Summer Tree website, I have a plant database where you can search for either like plants native to a certain area, or you could put in your sunset climate zone and just look for the plants in our database that grow naturally in that sunset climate zone. Um, the database, I have about 200 more plants to add to the database, and at the current moment I can't do it myself. The fellow who designed it for me has to upload them, and so check back in a couple of weeks and it should be a bigger database, because I have a whole lot of stuff ready to go. But at any rate, it's a start for put in your whatever you want. You could put cold hardy plants or whatever you want category, and it'll bring up plants and show you all the information about the plants in whatever categories you chose to search.
What's your website?
My my personal website is powerofplants.com, POWEROFPLANTS.com, and our nonprofit website is summertree.org, SUMMERTREE.org.
We've been trying to work also with native plants in Los Angeles, which is no longer as desert as everything you were published about. But does your expertise extend to Los Angeles?
Yeah, I went to college at UC Riverside, so I was pretty much steeped in a coastal scrub,
Yeah.
and chaparral. So I do enjoy a lot of that. I've actually been I don't know if it's what's going to happen come of it, but I love Crystal Cove State Park. I've done a lot of interpretive walks there, and the big thing like this that I've done for the desert, I've been working on one for Crystal Cove State Park, and it has a lot of the stuff that you have there in Los Angeles as well. And I hope that I can. I got this one done through grants. We published this through, getting grants. So I don't know if the state park is really interested, but I just had to do it. So I do have that interest and background. It's not as deep of a background as I have the desert, but I've spent some time there. Yes.
So on your website, we have your contact info.
Yes. Yes, it's on my website. Yeah. And you can just email me, robin@powerofplants.com or robin@summertree.org. Either way.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you also for the organization who brought you. What a great introduction.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed. I like to try to make confusing things a little less confusing. And some people, as much as they want to do natives, they don't know where to start. So I try to think of a way that would take the scariness out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And make you not quite as afraid, but I can do that. I was going to get that for here, so now I could do any of those instead of that. Because everybody, you say lavender. Well, you know where you're going to put the lavender in your yard. But what if you say, well, what if it's natives? And they just go, I don't know what to do. So
Yeah.
I hope that this does help.
It helps. Is it worth it in these climates to rain harvest, put barrels under the roof spout, being that it doesn't rain that often?
Well, that's a great question. It might be worth it.
I could speak to that.
Okay, Orchid, go ahead.
So you have to do a little math to decide if it's worth it. And so I have done the math for Pasadena and Los Angeles. I'll do it for Pasadena. So an average of 20 inches of rain, and I had a small house, 1,000 square feet. And so it's 0.6 a square foot per gallon per inch. And so what that worked out to is 12,000 gallons. So I didn't have a backyard big enough to fit a 12,000 gallon tank. So if you want to put rain barrels, put the biggest ones you can. But putting swales and earthworks is much more cost effective and gets more rain into the ground. So that's the first place to put your efforts.
Right.
Yeah. The person who spoke, can you put your email, please, in the chat? I'd like help with calculations.
Yeah, that was Orchid Black, who is a expert landscape designer and a great native plant proponent. And yeah, Orchid, that's really helpful because part of it has to do with exactly where you live. And I don't just mean like looking at a map. I mean, are you at the spine of the San Bernardino Mountains where we are, where we got 18 inches of rain when Hurricane Hillary came through, and people, just like 5 miles away got 8 inches. So it really depends on how much rain you're getting. But like Orchid said, putting swales and just making sure you keep the rain on your property is the most important thing. Don't let it go down, off of a slope and go down the gutter or whatever. Just do everything you can to keep that water on your property. It really is the best way to do in our climate here.
But I mean, what if it hits back into the foundations of the house?
Well, you don't want to keep water near the house. Swales are generally designed to capture water, away from the house and away from your driveway and things like that. You if it takes a what do you call it, a rain gutter, to move it even into an area where you have a swale, that's the best. But like Orchid was saying, trying to gather enough water, you know, coming off of your roof uh, is problematic on the west coast here, where we just don't have that kind of rain, or at least here on the southwest coast.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Orchard.
Please check the chat for the best rainwater website from Brad Lancaster. And watch all his videos. Honestly, it will change your life.
Harvesting rain water. Thank you very much.
Harvestingrainwater.com. Huh. Thank you, Orchid. Okay, well, thank you for all being interested, and I hope you go out and everybody plants a whole bunch more native plants in your yard.